Hello, I'm Nicolás Forero. I'm an executive at a K-12 virtual school. I'm helping companies with communication again. I'm rewriting the public-facing materials that they have. I'm revamping their funnels, their ads, and even then, I still commit mistakes both within my school, but also within my consulting practice. And the mistakes that I have been committing for the last 2 weeks in particular have costed me at least tens of thousands of dollars for my consulting practice for alternative education schools. But honestly, I've also committed those mistakes within the K-12 virtual school in which I serve as an executive. And those mistakes probably cost closer to, the hundreds of thousands. And, maybe some of them are direct costs, or some of them are just opportunity costs, things that I could have done if I had just acted better. There are 3 versions of this mistake, but they all revolve around a single mistake of how I've been communicating. You probably have more families that are interested in your program than you think you have. And if you just solve these 3 things, especially number 3, you're just gonna have a fantastic enrollment season. Now, what are the mistakes that I've been committing? Well, again, I've been an executive for almost 2 years at this alternative K-12 virtual school. And I've had people just warmly reach out to me. They see a lot of the results that I'm getting and they're always asking, hey, can you work with us? And I usually say, no, there's so much work that I'm doing. I don't need to just add up more things to my pile. But something that changed over the course of the last few weeks is that I just designed a 12-week program that you can see in the description, in which I'm only going to work with 5 schools at a time. I'm going to guarantee that they make thousands of dollars over the course of just a few weeks of working with me. And more importantly, I'm just want to try things out. So because I'm starting something new, and for me, it looks like I'm starting a new consultancy, but for my school, it has looked like, for example, launching a summer program. For your school, this might look like, hey, we're going to try to attract a different type of family. So think about it from the perspective of you're doing something new and you need to reach out to someone. Now, what has the problem that I've been committing? What has it been? Well, in my case, I've been reaching out to people on LinkedIn, right? And the way in which I've been reaching out to people, especially the first 200 people, is that I said something along the lines of, hey, I work in alternative school enrollment marketing, something like that. I saw this on your profile, you know the drill. I saw this on your profile, I saw this on your website, and I happen to work in this thing, and I feel that you and I can connect. And unfortunately, after, because I track everything on a spreadsheet, the amount of people that have sent the connection requests, when I'm sending them, if I send another message, I want to also log the date. Are you responding to that message? I'm just a maniac when it comes to collecting data. But the important thing is that I send 200 of those connection requests, in which I'm basically saying, hey, I do this thing, and I only got 10% of people to unfortunately accept the connection request. Because a connection request is just the first step of anything. Think about it as the number of people who are picking up your phone when you're going through a directory of families and just calling people randomly to see if they have kids and if they might be interested in a school. But after that call, you probably have to, set up another call with the head of admissions, probably book a shadow day, then go ahead and talk to the teacher, then go ahead and see if you have places in the cohort, then actually get them to pay the deposit. So the important thing that I'm trying to communicate is that there are multiple steps that are engaged in any type of sale that you're trying to do. And in my case, the very first step was just getting a connection request. The whole intention is I want to send a connection request and eventually ask for a call. So you could see why only getting 10% of people to respond would be a problem. Because if I just run the math and extrapolate and I've sent 200 messages and I'm not getting people, and I'm only getting 10% of people to accept a connection request, then chances are that based on the numbers that I have, it might take me thousands of people, thousands of connections before I even maybe have a few sales calls. And who knows how many thousands of connections we'll have to send in order to have sales calls that I'm able to close. Now, of course, there's improvement that can be made, and that's the whole point of the video. That's the whole point of the type of problem that I'm trying to describe to you, which I have been solving and which I want you to not have to solve, or just solve if you're facing it. But the important thing is that it's just terrible. The metrics that I have are terrible. So what did I do? I went ahead and I looked at the message, and immediately, after a few days of writing it, I noticed how it was just centered around myself. It had words that I use, like enrollment marketing strategy. And it also was just me saying, hey, this is what I do. And this is pretty normal in a lot of the schools that I work with. If you go into our website, you'll see words such as inquiry-based learning. You might see things like, we're a Montessori school. You might see things like, we're AI assisted. And families look at those words and they immediately get repelled because they do not understand them. And with time being so finite, and usually parents engaging with multiple schools before making a decision, if they go into your website and they don't understand something, they'll just leave. Now, the second problem that I was experiencing besides this is that it was centered around myself, which again, I've committed with my own school. Sometimes I've gone to a prospect and I talk about K-12 virtual school that I have, the fantastic teachers that I have, the founder who has been building schools for the last 35 years, and people immediately feel like I'm just selling to them and they leave. And you're losing on them basically because you are centering everything that you're saying around yourself. So how do you fix this? Well, for my consultancy in particular, I just started being more specific. I just started actually reading at the things that they were posting, maybe engaging with some of the material within their educational method, and I just send more personalized messages. And I'm gonna read a few to you. So I was saying, hey Matthew, I came across the most wonderful school, that's the name of the school, while researching how independent schools are navigating enrollment right now. I was really impressed by college prep model built specifically around executive functioning and learning differences. I would love to connect. So in this message in particular, I'm still kind of hinting at some of the work that I do or some of the interests that I have. Again, the whole point that I'm reaching out to these people is to establish a conversation and eventually, yes, see if there's an opportunity to work together. But more importantly, I'm also communicating something that I would only know if I had spent at least a few minutes on the website. Now, having done this, I went from having 10% of people reply to my messages to getting 18.8% of people reply to my messages. Fantastic. You know, that first interaction, whether it's an email, whether it's a call, you made it about them and you saw improvement. What's next? Well, next step is that you now have to do another action, another point of communication for them to basically, you know, to get one step closer into selling them something. In my case, it was going from that acceptance of the connection request to them actually responding to the replies. And I'm ashamed to say that out of the 200 people that I messaged, 0% actually replied to what I asked for in the connection request or to the insight that I sent. It was terrible. It was awful. I'm not happy with not getting a single response. So I sent out a second message and about 10 people, I think, were the ones who responded to it. I started looking at a lot of the messages that I'm sending, and you know, at first sight, I see that I'm sending an insight. You know, this is a very common thing to do. So for example, if you run a school and you're interested in getting people into a shadow day, maybe you're gonna go ahead and share a case study. You know, a transformation that a kid who was depressed, for example, or frustrated, or didn't feel challenged in their old school, and now they do, you know, you tell that whole story about that transformation. Maybe you go ahead and again, you know, prior to joining on a call with someone, you send a few assets so they learn a little bit about your school. So I was just sharing an insight. A usual problem that I see that a lot of my schools, you know, are facing, and the whole point is like, hey, this is a pattern that I face. Are you facing this problem? This is something that I once tried that was helpful. And I read that insight and I was like, this is helpful. They are bound to just love it. And again, I was getting no replies. So what do? I look at what I'm checking there and I'm asking myself, again, just as I did with the acceptance rate, I'm asking myself, what could be the biggest change that I could do that would, you know, what would be a good experiment to run to maybe improve the amount of people that are actually responding? Well, my logic immediately was like, hey, you might as well just ask them a question. And this is funny because you would think that if you send an insight or something that you feel that it's valuable, because you feel that it's valuable, but also because some other parents might have told you that it was valuable, you might think that this is more than enough to get people to be like, oh, fantastic, yeah, tell me more about it. But sometimes getting someone to respond, it's a matter of just asking them a question. So I have that message with share an insight. You know, think about any insight, any fun fact that you could share that you think will appeal to someone who might be interested in your school. And rather than just sending it, I kept it as it was, but then at the end, I added the following. Is this something that's happening to you? Is this something that sounds relatable to you? And the first 60 people that I sent that to, over the course of 24 hours, I got a total of 13 responses. Now, have I been mostly ignored? The answer is a big yes. However, am I slightly closer to my goal of turning someone into a customer? And the answer is also yes. Like, this is how you have to be thinking about enrollment. Let's say you are getting 1,000 people into your website, and out of those 1,000 people, only 10 people go ahead and, you know, sign up, or they fill up a form and they ask for your program overview. Let's say that out of those 10 people, only a single person is going to enroll. Now, these are not the most wonderful numbers in the world. Like, we're talking about getting 1,000 people to a landing page only to get a single person to actually enroll. What if you take that to 3%? Well, it's 3% conversion rate actually something good? You might not feel excited about that. You might think, those are not the kind of numbers that I want to be experiencing. Or maybe you look at a competing school and you think, chances are that they have people who can just close more of just prospects. But sometimes, what I encourage a lot of people to just follow, a lot of the directors that I talk to follow, is to think about in terms of just progressive experimentation and progressive improvement. I launched this program, or at least I started talking to people about a week and a half ago, and I already went from 0 chance of obtaining something to just a little bit more. Now think about what could happen as time passes. As I get more data like you have, chances are that you will just skyrocket the speed in which you can get results. And that's precisely something, there's a story adjacent to the one that I just told you, but that is part of my school. We have a list of, thousands of people in our email list, people that are interested in our K-12 virtual school, either our values, methodology, our team, or actually are interested in joining eventually. And for a while, I was looking at some data, and for the last 2 months or so, I noticed that we weren't getting a lot of people to ask anything on email. We were sending emails, people were clicking links to join a shadow day, but they weren't sending anything. And it was so frustrating because, of course, I could see the reply rate being 0. Again, 0% reply rate. This morning, I sent a message, and the message that I sent, the email that I sent, said just something like, hey, I'm curious. If you could change anything about your child's education or the experience that they're having day to day in school, what would it be? Funnily, 7 people after the few hours in which I sent this email replied to us. I went ahead, I forwarded them to my founder. He's going to respond to those. We're probably going to launch them on LinkedIn, on Twitter, use them as other assets. But the main thing is that I was not seeing a particular result out of a communication that was intended people to get an action. And the only thing that I had to do was just ask a question. If you just ask the question, like me with my consultancy, you might go from getting 0 responses to 13 out of the 60 messages that you send. Like my school, you might go from seeing 0 reply rate despite emailing thousands of people to getting at least 7 responses over the first few hours after the email was sent. And again, the reason they're way better is just both because of a present and a future thing. Now, the present thing is that in the present, you're gonna make more money. But in the future, it also means that you now collected data of the way in which a system works better, and now you can just keep acting in that exact way and applying that learning and doing more tests that are going to keep on improving the way in which you're communicating. Now, my acceptance rate is better. The amount of people that are replying to my first message, it's way better. Anything is way better than 0. So what came next? Because of course, something will come next. That's the nature of business. So I have been using Sales Navigator. Now I'm getting more acceptances. Now I'm getting more replies. And I send another batch of 100 connections. I get some replies, but after the second message, I get ignored. Of course, I start getting demotivated. I start being frustrated. I'm thinking, why am I even doing this if I'm just getting so many good deals outside of this? Like, do I even need the money? Do I even need to go through all these process of just building a company from scratch? With Funnily, it's way harder than building any of the businesses that I work with, which are usually schools making $500,000 to $1 million per year. I digress, but it's just a funny thing, when you don't have data, when you're starting from scratch, it's just stressful. The solution for this is one that I'm pretty sure that you already have, which is that I just sent a third message. So you know what happened? I got replies. I got replies from people who, I mistook as head of schools. And they just said, hey, we're not head of schools, good luck. There's some other guy who runs a Montessori, helps a Montessori network of schools. I got connected to a school founder through him. I haven't spoken to him. It might lead to nothing. I might be ghosted. But I got connected to someone. I connected to an old friend who has a business in China, and he opened up an opportunity that could be worth at least $30,000. Now, will I take it? Honestly, I don't think I will, because I think it will be a distraction from the main work that I'm doing that you can see in the description. But it's just, again, I unlocked an opportunity, and just like that, I got replies from more people who now I'm getting on calls with or will get on calls with. And the only thing that I did differently was that I just sent yet another message after I had, for whatever reason, convinced myself that they were no longer interested. And the math of how costly this is just frustrating to do. Because let's say that you have 20 families who at one point enrolled for a shadow day and only 10 of them attended. Out of those 10 families that you lost, if you're like the schools that I work with, if you're like myself, who when I'm acting as an executive at a school, I might go ahead and just look for more people. But if you just reach back to 10 of these people, the 10 people who didn't attend the shadow day, what would happen if you just convinced 2 of them to join? And what if they join your school? In terms of numbers, it sounds like I just had 2 people join. Doesn't sound very exciting. But if your tuition is $15,000, it means that those few messages that you send gave you $30,000. If you tend to retain people for at least 2 years, that's 60. For 3 years, that's 90. If it's for 2 years, but you get them to refer to someone, they also bring in, they also stay for 2 years. Now you just added in $120,000 from that single message that you sent. That's pretty good. More importantly, those second people will have come at a lower cost because they're coming from referrals. You are not having to spend more money on ads or content or whatever you're using to attract people. And again, they got unlocked by just messaging more. In my school, I've had the occasion in which, we went through a CRM migration. So we had all our contacts in a specific database, we migrated to a new one, and we lost some of those contacts. For some of them, we lost the contacts. For some other times, we lost the segmentation. There was this family who at one point had attended a shadow day, actually, and they just disappeared, and I assumed that they weren't interested. A few months later, I realized that they were outside of the list that I was emailing week by week by week. I bring them back in. I say something like, at the end of an email, I say, hey, if you're interested in coming to a shadow day. And they immediately go, hey, we attended a shadow day and we just forgot about it. We were traveling. We forgot you existed. We just remained within the school in which we were in. And then those people came into another shadow day and they just joined the school. Did we make tens of thousands of dollars, which is my whole intention and my whole role with this school? Not yet, but we did make a few tens of thousands. We could make way more if they refer to people. Going back to my consultancy, have I already made tens of thousands of dollars by this extra messages that I'm sending? Not yet. Am I closer? 100%. And again, this is the overall message that I've been trying to communicate. There are two messages actually. The first one is there's always a single thing that if you solve, you're gonna get more results from compared to solving something else. And the second thing is that if you unlock those, you're also gonna be facing more challenges. That's just the nature of business. But the beautiful thing is that you'll be better suited to do so. So in my case, it looked like now I have better acceptance rates. Now I have more people responding to my messages. And now the people who respond to my messages but ghost me, I'm getting them to reach back to me again. I'm now getting on calls. Some of those calls won't close. And by every call that I have, I'll have to be learning about it, just as any head of admissions would, just as any teacher would. Maybe you hire a professional like myself because you just want to go full in, go on advertisement and just attract thousands of dollars into your pipeline over the course of a few hours, a few days. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, depending on time frame in which you and I are working on. But the important thing is, again, I'm not solving the problem forever. I'm just getting slightly better at that individual problem so that I can then go focus on something else. What's gonna happen once you fix those things? You're gonna unlock more opportunities to just bring more money faster at a lower cost because now you have more data. That's precisely why, even though a lot of the work that I do with schools takes about 2 weeks, I then offer, as part of the 12-week program, you have group mentoring, you have an AI with my voice that you can call, and then you also have a training library. And again, it's not based on the fact that you're not gonna make way more money for just working with me. It's just from the fact that as your business grows, problems will become more complex, and I want you to be equipped with the tools to solve them faster, but also just make way more revenue from any type of improvement and implementation that you just add into your business. If you want to know about the communication gaps that you might be experiencing within your sales process or your marketing process, go look in the description. I have a link into a call in which we can diagnose that together. And more importantly, we can see if it makes sense for you and I to work together.